there's a term going around now. It's called metabolic flexibility. Right. So the idea is that you can switch between burning fat and carbohydrates interchangeably.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, there are people that have been promoting this. I mean,
yeah. And what do you think towards? I know what I think, but what do you think? Because you can say it better than I can.
my personal opinion of that is it's basically bollocks, in a sense. Now, I know some people will argue, well, don't we have seasonal sugar? Yeah, but that's about a month in a year. In the tropics, it's about twice in a season, so you probably get 2 to 3 months, but that's not the set point. And at the end of the day, if I look at the natural environment, pre-agriculture, show me one of these plants that basically we consume today that existed. They don't. Watermelon was a little thing that actually stuck in the, a very fibrous thing, and people would basically just suck into it for the water content.
Yeah.
Then we grew it into something that big from something which was that tiny, to something sort of really massive.
Same with the South American potatoes. I mean, like the first potato sort of
little
with
tiny
down, I
things.
thought it was like a little grape thing, like nothing. Like you're not
Exactly.
going to get much energy out of that.
And it was very fibrous.
Getting the fiber out of it as well.
Yeah.
You're not going to
It's
pull
a bit
much
like
from it.
it's a bit like, have you seen the like the fibrous stuff that the in I'm trying to remember. It was the Hudzer, that's right, the Hudzer
Yeah.
that Mary Ruddock was with. And
Well,
they
they
were
spit out.
basically they spit it all out, the fiber. They just suck some of the energy out of that, because these people, they're living from day to day. For them, even little bits of energy here and there keep them going from any source. And she actually checked their ketone levels, and it was only the tribal leader, the chief, who actually had high blood sugar, because he was getting all this candy from the tourists. But all the other guys were actually in this sort of low grade ketosis.
It's their natural state, isn't it? It's their body's
Exactly.
adapted to be there, so they can have, like, I don't know, find a load of honey one day or some fruit, berries,
Precisely.
whatever. Then next
Yeah.
day they're back in ketosis, no issue.
Exactly. They switch back into, because they're fat adapted. They just switch back with a bit of cheating here or there, and that just helps them basically put on a bit of adipose tissue. That's all, just to keep them going, so they don't lean out too much. So it's basically survival. But if you look in the natural environment, you will not find, and the majority of the, is being in this low grade where you're eating primarily, the flesh and the fat of animals. That's what you're doing the majority of time. So for me, that whole notion doesn't hold, because these people are just trying to justify consuming sugar on a regular basis. If they were saying, I'm just going to have it seasonally or occasionally, I'd say, fine, it's like a cheat, or like something that a tribal society does. If I'm having seasonally, fine. And I'd make sure, I'd say, well, make sure you're not getting the most modern, go for the berries and stuff like that are most closer to the ancestral types of fruit you would have consumed. So under those, but that's not what they want to justify. They want to justify much higher amounts. And I'm going, well, show me where it's indicated. When I look at tribal people like the Sand people, the Kalahari, and some of these groups, especially the Sand people, they're really an interesting group. And the reason for it is because their genetics are some of the oldest genetics of humans. They broke off the main group that the rest of the world is part of. And so they're the closest to the more ancient genetics of the human race. And when you look at their amyloids, their ability is very low, just slightly a bit better, like some of the apes that don't even consume much sugar at all. They're just primarily seasonal. So it's quite low. So their ability to produce amylase is really low. And their only real in this arid environment, their only real stuff that they actually consume are some nuts that they get, which are these very high fatty nuts. Basically, there's hardly any carbs, whatever. So a bit like macadamia nuts, similar thing. You can get them out of South Africa if you want to buy them, and pretty much that was about it. There's not really much fruit in their environment, and all that, and so they have very little access to any plant, foods in that sort of environment. So, they have this really very low amyloids that they can actually, so their genetics in terms of, the ability to produce amyloids is very reduced.
Yeah.
And so that's closer to the natural thing. It's basically people that have adapted that have moved into these upper tribal states, which are more complex tribal structures, like the Maasai, and they domesticate animals and stuff like that, these tribal forms. And then some of them go even one step further, where they started domesticating plants and stuff like that. And so they move to the next phase where they're actually bringing in. And obviously then there is an adaptation. We basically had something that was down-regulated severely now, hyper super carnivore state, and then later on, because we're starting to be exposed to some of these sort of things, the body sort of goes, okay, this person is consuming more of this, I better produce more of these type of enzymes that can basically break the stuff down that this person's consuming. So that's what's actually happened. And so if you take a look around the world even today, you will notice differences. Those people that have been exposed to agriculture far longer will be able to transcript more of these sort of enzymes compared to these populations that don't. So somebody trying to justify sugar addiction to me on that basis, this flexible stuff, I'm going, you just want to justify having sugar, when it's contraindicated based on the deuterium side of things, and also based on the, your genetics and stuff like that. Yes, you may be able to tolerate it better than somebody like a sand person, or, or basically an Inuit, or one of these people, or a Hadza or whatever. You may be able to tolerate it better, but that doesn't mean, it's indicated either. Just because you can tolerate it, because you've had, 10,000 years of exposure. And so, it takes longer for you to get sick on it compared to one of these tribal people. It doesn't mean it's optimal, so they sit there trying to justify it. That's all it is. It's bullshit.